The floodwaters of the Red Creek Dam breach hit the lower district in less than 20 minutes. Murky, trash-laden water rose rapidly, sweeping away parked vehicles and knocking down power lines. Selena was trapped against the reinforced steel railing of the old bridge. The current was brutally strong, and the freezing water had already reached her chin. She clung to the iron bars, her knuckles bone-white and numb from the cold. 50 feet away on the elevated concrete platform, an emergency rescue boat cut through the torrent. Her fiancé, Captain Austin Miller, stood at the bow in his full turnout gear, holding a spotlight. "Austin! Over here!" Selena shouted, her voice cracked and raw from inhaling mist and exhaust fumes. "The current's taking out the railing." Austin's spotlight swept across the water, landing squarely on Selena's face. For a second, relief washed over her. But then the light shifted instantly to the right, illuminating Gwen Brooks, a junior technical coordinator for the rescue team. Gwen was perched on a concrete barrier 10 yards away. Her uniform was dry above her ankles, and she was clutching a waterproof tablet. "Austin, I'm so scared." Gwen cried out, her voice amplified by her radio headset. "My foot is caught. I can't move." Austin didn't hesitate. He swung the bow of the rescue boat straight toward Gwen. "Austin, wait." A paramedic on the boat yelled over the engine's roar. Selena's pinned against the bridge railing. The water's at her neck. "She's going under." Austin kept his hands firm on the boat's control bar. His voice was cold, rigid, and completely broadcasted over the open comms channel. "Gwen is our primary technical officer on this shift. Her data keeps the team safe," Austin declared over the radio. "Selena is my fiancée. If I rescue her first, it looks like favoritism. How am I supposed to lead my crew if I break protocol for personal ties?" Selena stared at him, her breath hitching in her chest. The freezing water felt like 1,000 needles against her skin, but it was nothing compared to the sudden, hollow ache in her chest. "Favoritism?" Selena murmured under her breath, coughing up a mouthful of muddy water. "Austin, she's literally drowning." The paramedic screamed, reaching for a throw bag. "Stand down, Lawson." Austin barked, stepping off the boat onto Gwen's dry platform. He carefully picked Gwen up in a firefighter's carry, hovering over her like a guardian. "I have to remain impartial. Selena can hold on for another 5 minutes until the secondary unit arrives." Gwen buried her face into Austin's shoulder, whimpering softly. "Austin, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take your attention away from Selena." "You did nothing wrong, Gwen. Duty comes first," Austin said gently, stepping back into the boat while cradling her. "Let's get you to the ambulance." The motor roared, and the rescue boat turned away, cutting through the water toward the high ground staging area. Selena watched the boat recede into the rain. The spotlight never turned back to look at her. A massive surge of debris hit her legs. The railing groaned under the pressure. Selena pulled her right hand out of the water. On her ring finger sat a 2-carat diamond ring, the ring Austin had given her 2 years ago when he promised to protect her for the rest of his life. She slid the ring off her freezing finger. Without a second thought, she opened her palm and let it drop into the rushing brown water. It vanished in an instant. 10 minutes later, a civilian rescue kayak spotted her drifting near a submerged billboard and pulled her out. When Selena opened her eyes, the stark white ceiling of St. Jude's Memorial Hospital buzzed with fluorescent light. Her throat burned, and her left arm was hooked up to an N4 line. The room was silent. No one was sitting in the visitor's chair. Her phone on the bedside table vibrated twice. She reached out with trembling fingers and picked it up. It was a text from Austin. "Austin, Gwen had a severe panic attack and inhaled fumes, so I'm staying at the ER clinic with her tonight. I heard the civilian team picked you up. Don't be dramatic about what happened at the bridge. I had to think about team morale and protocol. We'll talk when I get home tomorrow." Selena looked at the screen for 3 seconds. She didn't feel anger, nor did she feel like crying. The 5 years of devotion, compromise, and patience she had poured into their relationship evaporated into thin air. She reached up, grabbed the 4 tape on her forearm, and ripped the needle straight out of her vein. A tiny drop of blood welled up, which she pressed down with a cotton swab. She swung her legs over the bed, stood up, and pulled her damp coat out of the closet. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an incoming call from Nora, her closest friend and corporate attorney. "Selena. Thank God you picked up," Nora's frantic voice filled the speaker. "I saw the news footage. Austin abandoned you on the lower bridge for that technical girl?" "Nora," Selena said, her voice completely level, devoid of any emotion. "I'm here. What do you need?" Do you want me to beat him up? No, Selena walked toward the hospital exit, her heels clicking firmly against the linoleum floor. I need you to draft 3 documents for me right now. Nora paused on the line. What documents? First, a complete lease termination and property division notice for the apartment. Second, a financial audit for every single dollar I've transferred into his account over the last 3 years, Selena said, pushing open the glass doors of the hospital lobby into the cool night air. And third, a civil lawsuit against Austin Miller and Gwen Brooks for gross negligence and willful endangerment. Selena. Are you sure about this? Austin's family has deep roots in the city's department, Nora asked carefully. Selena stopped on the sidewalk, looking up at the rain-slicked city skyline. I'm done being the understanding fiancé, Selena said softly. By tomorrow morning, I want them both served. Selena stood in the middle of the open-concept living room of the penthouse apartment. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek, tight bun, and she wore a sharp, tailored cream blazer over black trousers. On the marble coffee table lay 3 stacked leather boxes containing the jewelry Austin had given her over the years, alongside a neat binder detailing every expense she had covered since they moved in together. The front door unlocked with a sharp electronic beep. Austin walked in, still wearing his dark blue duty pants and an oversized fleece jacket. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked exhausted. Right behind him was Gwen. She wore one of Austin's oversized station hoodies, her hands tucked neatly into the front pocket, looking delicate and small. Austin stopped dead in his tracks when he saw the stacked suitcases near the foyer. His brow furrowed into a deep line. Selena? What is all this? Austin demanded, his voice thick with irritation. I told you I was coming home this morning. Why are there bags everywhere? Selena didn't look up from her tablet. These are my bags, Austin. I'm moving out. Austin scoffed, running a hand through his messy hair. Are you serious right now? You're throwing a tantrum over what happened yesterday? I explained the situation to you in the text. Gwen took a small, hesitant step forward from behind Austin. Her voice was barely a whisper. Selena. Please don't be mad at Austin. It was all my fault. My ankle was swollen, and I panicked. Austin was just doing his job as a captain. If you're going to blame anyone, blame me. Selena finally raised her eyes, looking at Gwen with an icy, detached calm that made Gwen's breath catch. I am blaming you, Gwen. But I'm dealing with him first, Selena said coolly. Watch your tone, Selena, Austin snapped, stepping in front of Gwen protectively. Gwen came all the way here to apologize to you in person, even though she spent half the night in the urgent care clinic. You're being completely unreasonable. Do you have any idea how stressful the last 24 hours have been for the department? I don't care about your department, Austin, Selena replied, stepping around the table. And I certainly don't care about your technical officer. Selena. Austin's voice boomed through the apartment. She's a colleague. You're acting like a jealous teenager. You used to be mature. What happened to supporting my career? My mother always said you were too self-centered, but I defended you. Your mother? Selena let out a short, humorless laugh. Your mother hasn't paid a dime for this apartment. I paid the 60% down payment on this place, Austin. I paid for your custom station boots. I paid for the legal fees when your brother got caught driving under the influence last summer. Austin's face flushed a deep, angry red. That was family business. You volunteered to help. And now I'm revoking my volunteer status, Selena said, tapping a document on the table. This is a formal notice of lease severance and asset division. My attorney has already filed the paperwork with the City Housing Board. You have 30 days to buy out my share of this property, or it goes on the market. Gwen gasped softly, clutching Austin's arm. Austin. Buy out her share? But that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Austin shook his head, looking at Selena as if she were a total stranger. You're out of your mind. You think you can just walk out and demand money after 5 years together? Over a minor misunderstanding at a rescue site? It wasn't a misunderstanding, a crisp, deep voice echoed from the open doorway. Austin and Gwen both turned sharply. A man in an impeccably tailored charcoal gray 3-piece suit walked into the apartment. He was tall, with sharp, aristocratic features and cold gray eyes that radiated pure authority. He carried a sleek black leather briefcase. Julian Vance. The youngest senior partner at Vance Sterling, the most feared litigation firm in the state. Austin blinked, taken aback by the man's commanding presence. Who the hell are you? This is a private residence. I am Julian Vance, Miss Brooks's legal counsel, Julian said smoothly, unbuttoning his suit jacket and stepping into the living room. He didn't even glance at Austin, his eyes rested solely on Selena for a brief second, softening with a subtle, reassuring warmth before turning back into stone. Vance? Austin's eyes widened slightly. As in Vance Sterling? Selena, why did you hire a high-profile corporate lawyer for a personal disagreement? It's no longer a personal disagreement, Captain Miller, Julian spoke, his tone smooth as silk but heavy as lead. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick, official envelope stamped with a county court seal. Julian stepped forward and handed the document directly to Austin. Austin Miller, you are officially served, Julian announced calmly. My client is suing you and Miss Gwen Brooks in civil court for gross negligence, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and willful endangerment of life during an active duty incident. Gwen's face drained of all color. Suing us? On what grounds? I didn't do anything. Miss Brooks, you will also be receiving a separate subpoena from the Fire Department Internal Affairs Bureau by noon today, Julian added, turning his piercing gaze onto her. Regarding the unauthorized modification of the dispatch location coordinates on the rescue network yesterday at 14:10 p.m. Gwen stiffened instantly, her hands trembling as she clutched Austin's sleeve tighter. I didn't modify anything. The system lagged because of the storm. The server logs say otherwise, Julian replied with an effortless smile that sent a shiver down Gwen's spine. We have the IP trace originating directly from your personal tablet. Austin looked between Gwen and Julian, his composure rapidly crumbling. Wait. Modified coordinates? Gwen, what is he talking about? Austin, he's lying. He's just trying to scare us. Gwen wailed, tears welling up in her eyes. He's Selena's lawyer, he's making things up. We can debate the validity of the IP trace in front of the Board of Inquiry tomorrow morning, Julian said coldly, turning back to Selena. He took her light suitcase from the floor with natural ease. Shall we go, Selena? The driver is downstairs, and your new apartment is ready. Selena picked up her handbag, standing tall and unbothered. She looked at Austin one last time. There was no pain left in her eyes, only absolute indifference. Selena, wait. Austin reached out to grab her arm, his voice suddenly desperate. You can't do this. If Internal Affairs gets involved, it'll ruin my chances for chief. Gwen could lose her license. You're ruining our lives over a mistake. Julian smoothly stepped between Austin and Selena, blocking Austin's hand with his arm. The physical contrast was stark. Julian was broader, taller, and projected an overwhelming power that made the firefighter captain look small. Touch my client again, Captain Miller, and I will add a restraining order to your file before the sun sets, Julian warned, his voice dangerously low. Austin froze, his chest heaving, completely paralyzed by Julian's dominance. Selena walked past him without a backward glance. See you in court, Austin. By 8 a.m. the following morning, the administrative headquarters of the city fire department was in absolute chaos. Austin stood in the center of the chief's office, his hands clenched into tight fists at his sides. Across the dark mahogany desk, Chief Harrison slatted a thick manila folder down onto the wood. Care to explain this, Captain Miller? Chief Harrison's voice vibrated with suppressed rage. Chief, it's a personal dispute, Austin said, trying to maintain a composure he didn't feel. Selena is angry because of a tactical decision I made on the water yesterday. She hired a hotshot corporate lawyer to stir up trouble. A tactical decision? Harrison scoffed, pressing a button on his desktop monitor and swinging it around to face Austin. Take a look at this. The regional dispatch server logs were leaked to the press 3 hours ago. At 2:10 p.m. yesterday, while the storm hit peak intensity, someone logged into the system using Gwen Brooks's credentials and shifted the distress beacon on Selena's sector by 400 yards. Austin stared at the screen, his stomach dropping. What? That 400-yard offset pushed her call out of our active grid and flagged it as a lower priority zone, Harrison continued, his face turning red. If that civilian kayak hadn't crossed paths with her, she would have drowned in that overflow. And you put on a show for the news cameras claiming you were following protocol to save your technical officer. Chief, Gwen wouldn't do that, Austin insisted, though a sudden seed of doubt planted itself deep in his chest. She was with me. She was terrified. Then explain why the IP address used to alter those coordinates traces directly to Miss Brooks's personal tablet. Harrison barked. And it gets worse. Vance Sterling filed a formal criminal complaint with the district attorney's office 20 minutes ago. They're charging her with attempted murder and reckless endangerment, and they're naming you as an accomplice for gross negligence." Before Austin could speak, the door to the chief's office swung open. Two uniformed officers from the Internal Affairs Bureau walked in, flanked by a court clerk holding a stack of legal documents. "Captain Miller, Miss Brooks," the lead IA officer announced loudly. Gwen, who had been sitting in the hallway waiting area, stumbled toward the doorway, her face pale as paper. "Austin? What's going on?" "Gwen Brooks, you are suspended immediately pending a criminal investigation," the officer said, stepping up to her and slapping a formal notice into her hands. "Hand over your department badge and your access credentials." Gwen burst into tears, clutching Austin's forearm wildly. "Austin, help me. I didn't do it. I swear I didn't. Selena is setting me up. She hates me because I'm close to you." "Miss Brooks, save it for the grand jury," the officer replied coldly. "We already seized your tablet from your locker. The forensic team verified the digital signature. You logged in 3 minutes after the flood warning hit." Austin pulled his arm out of Gwen's grip, looking at her in total disbelief. "Gwen. Did you change those coordinates? Did you know Selena was down there?" "Austin, no. You have to believe me." Gwen sobbed, reaching for him again. I just wanted you to come for me first. I was scared you'd leave me behind for her." The room went dead silent. Austin felt as if he had been slapped across the face. "You altered a live rescue signal. Because you were jealous? I didn't think she'd actually drown." Gwen wailed, trembling uncontrollably. "I thought she'd just wait a little longer." "Austin, please, tell them to stop." Chief Harrison slammed his hand down on the desk. "That's enough. Get her out of my office. Captain Miller, hand over your badge." Austin froze. "Chief? You abandoned a citizen in critical danger based on a lie you failed to verify, and you paraded your gross negligence on national television," Harrison said, his voice cold and final. "You are stripped of your command and suspended without pay, effective immediately. The disciplinary board meets on Friday to finalize your termination." An hour later, Austin stood on the steps outside the fire department building. The rain had stopped, replaced by a harsh, glaring sunlight. Gwen had been escorted away in an unmarked police cruiser for questioning. Austin's phone rang repeatedly, reporters, department members, and his mother were all trying to reach him. The news had exploded online. Hashtag Fire Captain Abandons Fiancé and hashtag Gwen Brooks Exposed were trending nationwide, complete with video clips of Julian Vance's press conference outside the courthouse. He ignored all of them and dialed Selena's phone number. It rang 3 times before connecting. "Selena. Selena, please listen to me." Austin spoke rapidly, his voice shaking. "I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know Gwen altered those coordinates. She lied to me. Does that change what you did, Austin?" Selena's voice came through the speaker, crisp, calm, and utterly unaffected by his panic. Austin choked back a breath. "Selena, they suspended me. They're going to fire me. My whole career. Everything I built is gone. Gwen is going to jail. Can't you just talk to your lawyer? Tell him it was a mistake. We can sit down and talk about this like adults." "You made your choice on that bridge, Austin," Selena replied softly. "You chose protocol over my life. Now you can live with the protocol." "Selena, I love you. I made a mistake, okay? I was stupid, I was blind." Austin yelled into the phone, tears finally breaking through his eyes. "Please. Don't do this to us. Give me one more chance." "There is no us, Austin," Selena said smoothly. "And by the way, check your mail. The court date for the property division has been set for next Tuesday." "Selena." A deep, smooth voice echoed from Selena's side of the line in the background. "Selena, the driver has brought the coffee. We need to review the deposition notes." "Coming, Julian," Selena answered gently, her tone completely different from the ice she reserved for Austin. "Was that Vance?" Austin roared, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the phone. "Are you with him right now?" "Goodbye, Austin," Selena said, and the line went dead. Austin pulled the phone away from his ear, staring at the black screen in absolute horror as he realized his world had completely collapsed. The county superior courtroom was packed to capacity. Reporters, local firefighters, and legal observers filled the wooden benches, whispered hushed theories among themselves. Austin sat at the defense table, wearing a dark suit that felt 2 sizes too big. His eyes were sunken, dark circles heavy under them. Beside him, Gwen sat trembling in an Orange County jail jumpsuit, her defense attorney frantically shuffling papers. On the plaintiff's side, Selena sat poised and completely composed in a royal blue suit. Next to her, Julian Vance stood behind his desk, leaning forward slightly, his sharp, icy gaze fixed on the judge. "The court will come to order," Judge Vance announced, tapping her gavel. "We are here for the motion of summary judgment in the case of Brooks v. Brooks and Miller. Plaintiff's counsel, you may proceed." Julian stepped away from the table, his movements smooth and calculated. "Your Honor, the facts of this case are straightforward and indisputable," Julian began, his deep voice carrying effortlessly across the courtroom. "On August 11, defendant Gwen Brooks intentionally altered the geolocation coordinates of my client, Selena Brooks, during a critical flood emergency. She did this using her administrative access credentials while on duty." Objection. Gwen's attorney stood up quickly. "Your Honor, my client maintains that the signal drop was due to bad weather and server lag. There is no proof of malice." Overruled. "Sit down, Mr. Davis," Judge Vance said dryly. "Mr. Vance, present your evidence." "Thank you, Your Honor," Julian said, turning to face the jury box. He picked up a wireless remote and clicked a button. A large monitor on the wall lit up with detailed server logs, IP tracking charts, and timestamped internal messaging logs. "Exhibits A through D," Julian stated calmly. "Exhibit A shows the exact seconds Miss Brooks altered the location pin from Sector 4 to Sector 9. Exhibit B shows a private text message sent from Miss Brooks's personal phone to a coworker 5 minutes prior, reading, 'Watch how quickly Austin drops everything for me today.'" A collective gasp echoed through the gallery. Austin turned his head sharply toward Gwen, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Gwen. You texted that?" Gwen lowered her head, sobbing hysterically into her folded hands, unable to answer. "Furthermore," Julian continued, his voice hardening like steel, "Exhibit C details defendant Austin Miller's gross failure as a commanding officer. When informed by paramedics that Miss Brooks was in immediate danger of drowning, Captain Miller refused to deploy the rescue line, citing department protocol and favoritism. He then proceeded to evacuate defendant Gwen Brooks, whose ankles were barely wet. I was following procedure." Austin shouted out from his seat, suddenly standing up. "I thought she was safe. I didn't know the location was changed." "Sit down, Captain Miller. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt," Judge Vance warned sharply, slamming her gavel down. Austin sank back into his chair, sweating profusely, his hands trembling on the table. Julian walked over to the defense table, stopping just inches away from Austin and Gwen. He looked down at them as if they were nothing more than insects. "Ignorance is not an excuse for abandonment, Captain Miller," Julian said, his voice dropping to an icy, dangerous level. "You allowed your personal bias to override your sworn oath to protect lives. You let your fiancé bleed and freeze in the water so you could play the hero for another woman. It wasn't like that." Austin choked out, tears finally streaming down his face. "Selena, tell him. You know I cared about you." Selena didn't even turn her head to look at him. She stared straight ahead, her voice clear and resonance ringing through the silent room. "You cared about your ego, Austin," Selena said, her words hitting him like a physical blow. "You cared about looking impartial in front of your crew. You never cared about me." Julian turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, the evidence clearly demonstrates gross negligence, intentional infliction of distress, and malicious obstruction of emergency services. We request the maximum civil damages, as well as immediate referral to the district attorney for criminal prosecution." Judge Vance reviewed the documents on her desk for 2 brief minutes before looking up over her glasses. "The evidence presented by the plaintiff is overwhelming," Judge Vance declared. "This court finds defendant Gwen Brooks liable for intentional endangerment and fraud. She will remain in custody without bail pending her criminal trial." Gwen let out a piercing scream as 2 bailiffs immediately stepped forward and slapped handcuffs onto her wrists, dragging her away toward the side-holding cell. "Austin! Help me! Austin, please!" Austin sat frozen, completely hollowed out as her screams faded down the hallway. "Regarding defendant Austin Miller," Judge Vance continued, her voice heavy with disapproval. "Your actions were a disgrace to your uniform and a violation of public trust. The court orders full financial restitution to the plaintiff, including the immediate surrender of your equity in the joint property. Furthermore, this court recommends your permanent dismissal from the fire department." Gavel slam. Court is adjourned. The gallery erupted into noise as reporters rushed out to file their stories. Austin sat motionless in the empty courtroom as Selena stood up and picked up her handbag. He stumbled out of his chair, blocking her path near the wooden exit gate. Selena. Please, Austin pleaded, his voice cracking, looking completely broken. They took my badge. My house is gone. My reputation is destroyed. I have nothing left. Is this what you wanted? Selena stopped and looked at him. For the first time in days, she met his eyes, not with anger, but with absolute, crushing pity. I didn't destroy your life, Austin, Selena said softly, stepping around him. You did that all by yourself the moment you let go of my hand. Julian stepped up beside Selena, gently placing a hand on the small of her back as he opened the heavy wooden court doors for her. Let's go home, Selena, Julian whispered softly, his tone laced with a warmth he reserved only for her. Your new life is waiting. 3 weeks after the trial, the late afternoon sun warmed the pavement outside Selena's upscale downtown condo complex. A large moving van was parked near the loading dock, its rear doors wide open. Selena stood near the entry foyer, checking off items on her digital inventory list as 2 movers carefully rolled out the last of her packed crates. Her phone chimed with an incoming call from Nora. Hey, tell me you're almost packed, Nora's voice bubbled through the speaker. The flight to Shenzhen leaves tomorrow morning at 10, and we still need to celebrate your fresh start. Selena smiled, setting the tablet down. Just finished the last box. Everything from the old apartment is either sold or in storage. Good. Good riddance to that place, Nora said briskly. Oh, by the way, did you hear? Austin's mother tried to call my office 3 times today. Selena paused, picking up a water bottle. What did Mrs. Miller want? The usual guilt trip, Nora snorted. She was crying about how Austin lost his pension, how he's working night shifts at a private security firm, and how you're destroying a boy who made one simple mistake. I blocked her number from our firm's switchboard. Thanks, Nora. I appreciate it, Selena said softly. I'm done dealing with the Miller family. I know you are. See you at dinner at 7. As Selena hung up, a shadow fell across the foyer entrance. She turned and froze. Austin stood by the glass doors, wearing faded jeans and a plain black t-shirt. He looked hollow, his cheeks were sunken, his posture slouched, and the confident, commanding edge he had always carried as a fire captain was entirely gone. Selena, Austin spoke, his voice hoarse. He stayed near the doorway, not daring to step fully inside. Austin, Selena said, keeping her posture upright and her tone entirely neutral. You shouldn't be here. The civil settlement terms specifically stated. I know. I'm not here to cause trouble, Austin cut her off, holding up his hands in a gesture of surrender. I heard from a mutual friend that you're moving away. To Shenzhen. For good. I am, Selena replied simply. My new brand management agency is launching there next month. Nora and I are setting up the regional office. Austin swallowed hard, staring at the neatly packed boxes around her. I came to give you this. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, placing it carefully on a side table near the door. Selena looked at it without moving. What is that? It's your mother's pearl necklace, Austin said, his voice trembling slightly. My mother had taken it back after we split up, saying it belonged to our family now. I went back to her house yesterday and took it out of her safe. Selena's eyes flickered with a brief spark of emotion before returning to cold composure. She walked over and picked up the box, opening it to confirm the heirloom was safe inside. Thank you for returning it, Selena said, closing the box with a soft click. It's the only thing of value in that house I actually cared about. Austin stepped closer, a desperate, longing look in his eyes. Selena. Please. Just give me 5 minutes. Can we just talk? No lawyers, no courtrooms. There's nothing left to say, Austin. I lost everything. Austin's voice broke into a choked sob. My captain's badge is gone. Gwen is facing 2 years in state prison. My friends from the station won't even take my calls anymore. They look at me like I'm a monster. You chose to act like one on that bridge, Selena said, her voice steady and unyielding. You sacrificed my life for your pride and Gwen's manipulation. You didn't care about my safety until it threatened your career. I was wrong. Austin took another step toward her, tears filling his eyes. I was an idiot. I was blind. I swear to God, every single night I wake up in a cold sweat seeing you in that water. I would give up 10 years of my life just to go back to that afternoon and pull you into that boat. It's too late, Austin, Selena said coldly. The woman who waited for you in that water died that day. Before Austin could reply, a sleek black town car pulled up to the curb right outside the glass entrance. The door opened, and Julian Vance stepped out, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit. Julian walked into the foyer, his long strides effortless and commanding. He didn't even acknowledge Austin as he walked straight over to Selena, taking the heavy duffel bag from her hands. "The driver is ready, Selena," Julian said gently, his gray eyes softening as he looked down at her. "Your flight details and corporate housing documents in Shenzhen are all finalized." Selena looked up at Julian, a genuine, relaxed smile touching her lips. "Thanks, Julian. I'm all set." Austin stared at Julian, his jaw tight, fists trembling at his sides. "Did you set this up? Did you orchestrate her job offer overseas just to get her away from me?" Julian turned slowly, looking at Austin with complete indifference. "Miss Brooks's talent and resilience created her opportunity, Captain Miller. I merely ensured she had the top-tier legal and corporate backing she deserved, something you failed to provide for 5 years. She was mine." Austin snapped, stepping forward aggressively. "We were getting married." Julian stepped in front of Selena, his towering frame completely blocking Austin's path. His voice dropped to a dangerously calm baritone. "She was never your property, Mr. Miller," Julian said smoothly. "And you threw away your right to even speak her name the moment you left her in that river. If you step within 10 feet of her again, I will personally enforce the restraining order and ensure your private security license is revoked by nightfall." Austin stood frozen, crushed by the weight of Julian's authority, unable to squeeze out another word. Selena turned away, walking beside Julian toward the waiting car. She didn't look back at Austin once as the heavy glass doors slid shut behind her, sealing her past away forever. 6 months later, Shenzhen. The glass-walled grand ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel buzzed with chatter. Over 300 executives, investors, and high-fashion directors gathered for the annual Pacific Rim Brand Innovation Gala. Selena stood near the center stage, wearing an elegant emerald green silk gown with an asymmetrical shoulder cut. She held a flute of champagne, chatting effortlessly with 2 venture capitalists about her agency's latest quarter results. Her brand, Brooks' marketing strategy, had taken the local market by storm, securing 3 major luxury account contracts in less than half a year. Across the crowded room, Austin stood by a service pillar, wearing a dark rental suit that fit awkwardly around his shoulders. After losing his captain's badge, he had taken a low-level regional sales rep position for a fire suppression equipment supplier. He had spent 3 weeks begging his regional manager just to get an entry pass to this gala, hoping to network with corporate buyers. He had no idea Selena would be here. Austin stared at her from 20 feet away, his chest aching. She looked radiant, confident, and completely out of his reach. The quiet, compliant woman who used to pack his lunches and sit by the phone waiting for his shifts to end was gone. In her place was an executive everyone in the room wanted to talk to. "Austin? Why are you staring at Miss Brooks?" his regional manager, Mark, asked, walking up beside him with a plate of appetizers. Austin swallowed hard. I used to know her." Mark laughed out loud, nearly choking on his drink. "You used to know Selena Brooks? Don't joke like that, man. She's the keynote speaker tonight. Her agency just signed a $40 million distribution deal with Vance Global." "Vance Global?" Austin's voice dropped. Before Mark could answer, a middle-aged corporate director named Henderson approached Selena, a condescending smirk on his face. "Miss Brooks," Henderson said loudly, deliberately interrupting her conversation. "I read your agency's proposal for our retail line. Quite ambitious for a firm that's only been operating in Shenzhen for a few months. Some of my board members are wondering if your rapid growth is due to actual business merit, or if you're leveraging certain personal relationships with your legal backers." The small circle of executives went quiet. Several eyes turned toward Selena. Selena didn't flinch. She took a tiny sip of her champagne and looked Henderson straight in the eye. "Mr. Henderson," Selena said, her voice smooth and carrying across the quieted circle. "My agency's Q3 performance report shows a 42% increase in brand retention for our clients. If your board believes numbers like that can be generated through personal relationships, I suggest your financial team retakes basic statistics." A few quiet chuckles rippled through the nearby crowd. Henderson's face flushed red. "I'm just suggesting that a young woman moving across the world after a public scandal back home usually doesn't land top-tier contracts without extra help. She landed those contracts because she is the best in the industry." A sharp, commanding voice cut through the air. The crowd parted instantly. Julian Vance walked into the circle, looking striking in a bespoke black tuxedo. His presence was so intense that several executives stepped back instinctively to give him room. Julian walked directly to Selena's side, resting a reassuring, protective hand on the curve of her waist. He looked down at Henderson with eyes cold enough to freeze water. "Mr. Henderson," Julian spoke, his tone dangerously calm. Vance Global's investment committee evaluated 17 marketing firms before selecting Brooks Marketing. Miss Brooks's strategy was chosen purely on merit. If you ever disrespect my firm's managing partner, or my future partner in life, in public again, Vance Sterling will initiate a full audit of your company's offshore holdings by midnight. Henderson went pale, taking an involuntary step back. "Mr. Vance, I was merely asking a question." "You were making an offensive insinuation," Julian cut him off coldly. "Leave." Henderson didn't wait for a second warning. He turned on his heel and disappeared into the crowd. The room returned to hushed conversations, everyone thoroughly impressed by Julian's ruthless defense. Julian turned to Selena, his expression instantly softening as he looked down at her. "Are you all right?" "I'm perfect," Selena smiled, her eyes sparkling. "Thanks to you." Unable to take it any longer, Austin broke away from his manager and marched toward them. "Selena!" Austin called out, stopping 5 feet short as 2 security guards immediately flanked Julian. Selena turned, her smile fading into a cool, professional distance. "Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller?" Austin repeated, his voice cracking with humiliation. "Is that what I am to you now? After 5 years? You're a guest at a private gala, Austin," Selena said calmly. "And you're making a scene." "I saw how he spoke to that guy for you," Austin said, staring at Julian with raw hatred. "You replaced me with him. Is that why you left so quickly? Was it Vance all along?" Julian didn't even raise his voice. He glanced at the head of hotel security standing nearby. "Escort this man out," Julian instructed softly. "And inform his employer that his press credentials for all Vance-sponsored venues have been permanently revoked." "Wait. No. Selena, listen to me." Austin pleaded as 2 large security officers grabbed his arms, dragging him backward toward the exit doors. "I still love you. I made a mistake. Please, just give me 5 minutes." Selena watched him being hauled away down the carpeted hallway. She didn't feel anger, nor did she feel satisfaction. She turned back to Julian, gently resting her hand over his on her waist. "Shall we get a quiet table away from the stage?" Julian asked softly, leaning in close to her ear. "I'd love that," Selena replied, stepping forward into her bright, unshakable future. 3 weeks after the gala, Selena stood on stage in the grand auditorium of the Shenzhen International Convention Center. She was delivering the opening keynote for her agency's high-profile autumn product launch. Over 500 industry leaders, journalists, and investors were seated in the hall, while thousands more tuned in via livestream. Behind her, a massive LED screen displayed sleek graphic slides detailing her agency's regional expansion. Suddenly, the side door of the auditorium swung open with a bang. Gwen Brooks burst into the venue. She looked disheveled and frantic, wearing a rumpled coat, her hair tangled, and her eyes bloodshot. She held a smartphone high in the air, its screen recording a live stream to her social media account. "Selena Brooks!" Gwen screamed, her voice echoed loudly through the auditorium's acoustics. "Stop lying to everyone. You ruined my life. You put me in prison. You stole Austin from me, and now you're standing up there acting like a saint." The crowd gasped. Dozens of phones were immediately pulled out as reporters turned their cameras toward the back of the room. Selena stopped mid-sentence. She didn't panic, nor did she rush off stage. She stood calmly at the podium, looking down at Gwen with a cool, collected expression. "Miss Brooks," Selena said, her voice amplified clearly through her lapel mic. "You were released on conditional bail pending your appeal trial 3 days ago. Violating your restraining order and crashing a private corporate event will revoke your bail instantly." "I don't care about my bail," Gwen yelled, marching down the center aisle, holding her phone camera directly up toward the stage. "Look at her, everyone. Look at the cold-hearted monster who ruined an entire fire station. She paid off judges. She used Julian Vance's money to fabricate evidence against me." Austin rushed through the same side door, breathless and frantic. "Gwen! Stop it. What are you doing?" He grabbed Gwen's arm, trying to pull her back, but Gwen violently shoved him away. "Get off me, Austin!" Gwen shrieked at him, her face twisting in rage. "You spineless coward. You begged her for money last week. You told me you regretted ever taking my side on that bridge." Austin's face turned bright red as the reporter's flashes lit up his horrified expression. Gwen, shut up. The press is streaming this live. Selena tapped her tablet on the podium twice. Since Miss Brooks wants to discuss the events of that bridge live in front of the world, let's review the recorded evidence. With a quick swipe on her tablet, Selena overrode the main LED screen. The product presentation vanished, replaced by an audio waveform and a high-definition video overlay. It was an unedited audio recording with a timestamp from 2 weeks after Gwen's arrest. Gwen's frantic, sharp voice filled the auditorium speakers. Austin, you have to pay my legal defense fees. If you don't give me $50,000 by Friday, I'll tell the press that you ordered me to change Selena's location coordinates. I'll ruin your career completely. Then came Austin's desperate, panicked response on the recording. Gwen, are you crazy? You altered those coordinates on your own because you were jealous. I never told you to kill her. I just thought she'd wait in the water for 10 minutes so I could bring you in first. The auditorium erupted into a wall of noise. Reporters gasped loudly, frantically typing on their laptops while camera shutters clicked continuously. Gwen froze, her mouth agape, her smartphone slipping out of her trembling hand and shattering on the carpeted floor. Where did you get that audio? You left that voicemail on Austin's cloud backup, Miss Brooks, Selena said, her voice ringing with absolute authority. Which was subpoenaed during our civil lawsuit and made part of the public court record. Austin stood in the center aisle, completely paralyzed as hundreds of judgment-filled eyes locked onto him. The entire business community now witnessed his complete moral collapse. You both used each other, Austin whispered, looking between Gwen and the screen, realizing his remaining shred of dignity was utterly destroyed. You lied to me, Gwen. And Selena. You exposed me to the world. You exposed yourself, Austin, Selena replied coldly from the stage. The moment you chose deceit over integrity. Heavy footsteps echoed from the back entrance. 4 uniformed police officers walked briskly down the aisle, flanked by Julian Vance. Julian stopped beside the lead officer, pointing a calm finger at Gwen and Austin. Officer, those are the 2 individuals violating state restraining orders and trespassing on private commercial property. Gwen Brooks, Austin Miller, you're under arrest, the lead officer declared, pulling out handcuffs. Gwen started screaming and kicking as the officers forced her arms behind her back. Austin, do something. Save me. Austin didn't move. He let the officers slide the steel cuffs over his wrists, his eyes fixed on Selena on the stage. Tears of absolute regret streamed down his face. Selena. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Selena didn't say a single word back. She simply watched as the police dragged both of them out of the auditorium, their public downfall witnessed by millions online. Julian walked up the side steps of the stage, handing Selena a fresh glass of warm water. He looked at her with unconditional pride and gentle affection. The room is yours, Selena, Julian whispered softly. Selena took a sip, turned back to the audience, and smiled warmly. Now, as I was saying regarding our Q4 launch strategy. 6 months after the release of the audio recording, the quiet turmoil that had defined Selena's past was completely gone. Austin had been blacklisted from every major emergency service and private security firm in the state, forced to move to a small rural town to avoid public hostility. Gwen was serving her 18-month sentence at a state correctional facility. Meanwhile, Selena's firm, Brooks Marketing Strategy, was named Agency of the Year at the Asia-Pacific Commerce Summit. On a cool Saturday evening, the top-floor observatory terrace of the Vance Corporate Tower overlooked the shimmering city skyline. The space was closed to the public, decorated with white gardenias and soft, warm fairy lights hanging overhead. Selena stood near the glass perimeter, wearing a stunning fitted cream-colored silk gown. She looked down at the bustling city below, a gentle, peaceful smile on her face. Julian walked out onto the terrace, holding 2 glasses of sparkling water. He wore a crisp black tuxedo without a tie, looking relaxed yet unmistakably powerful. He walked up behind her and handed her a glass. A penny for your thoughts, CEO Brooks, Julian said softly, his voice rich and deep. Selena turned, leaning her shoulder lightly against his chest. I was just thinking about how fast 2 years can change everything. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over on that bridge. Julian set his glass down on a nearby marble ledge, his gray eyes locked onto hers with intense warmth. Your life didn't end that day, Selena. It just freed you from people who didn't know your worth. I never got to ask you, Selena said, looking up into his eyes. When did you decide to take my case? A high-profile partner like you doesn't usually handle civil property disputes. Julian let out a low, smooth chuckle, reaching out to tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear. I didn't take it for the property dispute, Selena, Julian admitted gently. I had been following your corporate strategy work at your previous agency for a year before that incident. I saw how brilliant, resilient, and brilliant you were, and how much that coward was holding you back. When Nora called my office that night and said you were in trouble, I took the case within 30 seconds. Selena blinked, surprised. You knew about me before the bridge? I knew you were extraordinary long before you realized it yourself, Julian said softly. He took both of her hands in his fingers warm and reassuring. And watching you rebuild your life, brick by brick, with such absolute dignity. It was the most remarkable thing I've ever witnessed. Selena felt her heart skip a beat. Over the past year, Julian had been her rock. He had protected her in court, championed her business, and stood by her without ever pressing her for more than she was ready to give. His love was never conditional, it was absolute and steady. Julian. Selena murmured, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. Julian stepped back slowly and sank down onto one knee on the smooth stone terrace. He pulled a small, black velvet box from his inner suit pocket and flipped it open. Inside rested a flawless, 5-carat emerald-cut diamond ring, surrounded by subtle platinum detailing. Selena Brooks, Julian spoke, his voice steady, grounded, and filled with deep emotion. For 5 years, you were forced to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's small world. I don't want you to ever shrink again. I want to build an empire beside you. I want to protect your peace, support your dreams, and spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel abandoned for a single second. Tears welled up in Selena's eyes, but for the first time in her life, they were tears of pure, unadulterated happiness. I don't need you to be perfect, Julian added, looking up at her with complete vulnerability. I just need you to let me love you the way you've always deserved to be loved. Will you marry me? Selena didn't hesitate for a fraction of a second. She stepped forward, kneeling down right in front of him on the stone floor, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck. Yes, Selena whispered against his cheek, a breathless laugh escaping her lips. Yes, Julian. 1,000 times, yes. Julian let out a deep, relieved laugh, slipping the ring onto her finger before pulling her into a deep, passionate kiss. Around them, the lights of the city glittered like 1,000 stars. 2 weeks later, a simple, elegant wedding announcement was published on the front page of the Wall Street Journal and the Shenzhen Daily. In a quiet beach resort 3 hours outside the city, Austin sat inside a small, dimly lit diner during his break from a gas station shift. His hands were stained with motor oil, and his eyes were dull and lifeless. He picked up a discarded copy of the newspaper left on the counter. On page 3, a full-color photograph caught his breath. Selena stood in a breathtaking white lace wedding dress, smiling radiantly beside Julian Vance, who held her hand tightly in front of a small group of cheering friends and family. The headline read, Corporate Strategist Selena Brooks Marries Legal Titan Julian Vance in Private Ceremony. Austin stared at her joyful smile, a smile he hadn't seen in years. Tears spilled over his lashes, dripping onto the cheap newsprint paper. He clutched the paper to his chest, sinking his head onto the counter, completely broken by the agonizing realization that the woman he had carelessly thrown away was now living a life of love and glory he could never touch again. Far away on the sunny terrace of a private villa, Selena walked hand in hand with Julian toward the beach, stepping boldly into the warmth of her forever.